What's going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of Just a Variation Speaks. Today, we're going to be going over retirement. I know that every now and then someone wants to retire, and when they finally do get to retire, they don't even know if they're going to have enough or if it's going to last. People's fears basically, they are afraid of whether or not they're going to be able to retire. And even if they do, are they going to run out or is it going to be able to keep going? Right? So stay tuned. We're going to be going into it. All right, so I understand that there's a lot of different factors to take into consideration when it comes to retirement and being able to have enough for retirement. So, the few that I'm going to go over, I'm just going to go over it and we'll have some brief talking points here, right? So, the first one is market volatility. What does that mean? So, basically the market's going up and down, right? Kind of like a yo-yo going up on an escalator, right? But for the most part, it's most part it's going up. I can't even speak today. Anyway, market volatility. So basically, in the financial markets, whether it's the stock market or the real estate market or some sort of market, the financial markets they're up and down, right? And it's possible, if you guys have ever heard of the 4% rule, it is possible to potentially run out of money. And that's because, if you take out at the wrong time, then shoot, you're making those losses permanent, right? And when I say by the wrong time, I'm saying here's the market, it's going up. You want to be able to take out when it's going up. Awesome. But when it's down, well, where are you going to be pulling from, right? Hopefully you have some cash set aside or you have some other assets that can, give you the money that you need. But when the market's down, you don't want to make your losses permanent. You want to make that temporary, right? And be able to have another bucket to be able to pull from. And we'll go into the another bucket strategy maybe a little bit later. We might even go through it now, right? So bucket number one is your taxable bucket, right? Then you have your tax deferred bucket. And then bucket number three is your tax free bucket. So basically you have three buckets, right? And if you have a hole in your bucket, what do you need to do? Some of you guys are going to say, get another bucket. But before you get that other bucket, you should probably catch what's dripping from this other bucket, right? So that was just a little bit detour. We can go into that a little bit. But basically, the market's going to go up and down. The main thing is you could potentially run out of money. And I'm actually going to go through this example in just a little bit. The second thing that would actually eat away at someone's retirement is actually inflation. Now we all understand inflation is basically, well, first of all, what inflation is not is basically taking a balloon and inflating it, right? Go, well, now it's growing. That's not it. What inflation is basically the cost of everything going up, right? And we've seen it with the gas prices. We've seen it with the prices of homes. We've seen it with the price of just food in general, right? That's inflation, right? The third thing here is going to be longevity risk. So basically, people are living longer, and the longer that you live, the longer you need your money to go. And originally, the 4% rule that was actually made for a period of 30 years. With people living longer, well, people might outlive their savings if they don't adjust, how they're taking their money out, right? So that's definitely something you got to look into. The fourth thing here is going to be healthcare costs. So basically, the cost of health, and especially with everything that went on in just the mid, 2010s all the way up till now, a lot of financial advisors and financial planners and retirement planners and things like that, sometimes they actually forget to incorporate the cost of healthcare. And we already know healthcare ain't cheap, right? If you're on Medicaid, great, right? Medicaid is the government entity taking care of the cost of insurance for you, or the cost of care for you, not the cost of insurance, but the cost of care. And then, of course, you have your under 65 market where they get private plans, right, on the individual market. And then, of course, you have your group market with, basically you're working for a job, they take care of you, and great, you have health insurance, right? Group market. But as you get older, the cost of care could actually get a whole lot more, could cost a whole lot more. And so a lot of people they don't account for that. And so, it takes one doctor's visit. And if you don't have a health insurance plan that has a lower out of pocket maximum, well, you could eat away at your savings, especially if it's a down year. Remember, I talked about that down year, right? And it eats away at your savings. Well, that's where healthcare costs can actually eat away at your retirement. So, Another thing here is low interest rates. In a low interest environment, and I'm going to read this verbatim because I have to actually have to read it first, then explain it, right? So, in a low interest rate environment, generating sufficient income from traditional fixed income investments might be challenging. And we're looking at you know, bonds and things like that. So, retirees relying on these investments for income may struggle to meet their income needs with a 4% distribution. So, basically, when there's low interest rates, bonds may not perform the way that they need to. I'm gonna leave it at that. The sixth one here is global economic conditions. So basically, the changes in the global economy, right? There's geopolitical events or economic downturns that can affect the performance of investment portfolios and impact the sustainability of taking out, 4%, or, I always keep going back to the 4% rule, but that 4% rule may not work. This next one is a really big one. It's called the sequence of returns risk, right? And so the order of which investment returns occur, or basically in the way that you get those investment returns, right, every year. Well, if you get investment poor investment returns early in retirement, that's gonna actually affect how long you're able to take out your retirement. And that 4% rule may not work. So basically, we're here on portfoliovisualizer.com, and this is where we get to do a backtest portfolio. And what we're going to do is do a backtest asset allocation, a portfolio for that. So basically, earliest it'll give us is 1972. I like to just hit 1973, just give it like a year in advance. Um, and then of course, we'll just make it, this year's 2023. Let's give it a 40-year time span, right? Actually, no, 50-year time span, right? So, I looked at NerdWallet. The average retirement balance according to NerdWallet was 609 and 230, right? So 609,230. Now, we already understand that when people retire, they want to be able to retire in dignity, right? So we allow them to retire at least on like 4 grand a month. Let's say the kids are moved out of the house is paid off, they're almost debt free. Maybe they got a car or a credit card or two. They still want to go on vacations, they still want to eat wherever they want. Well, hopefully their bills are a whole lot less than 4 grand a month. But average household, 4 grand a month. Again, we're talking about average, right? So the average person, this is not the median, but this is the average, $609,230. And if they're going to retire on 50 grand a year, great, right? We're going to take the inflation adjusted off because we don't want it to be inflation adjusted. We don't want them running out of money sooner than they need to. We just want them to take out the 50 that they need to. If inflation goes up, oh well, they'll adjust, right? Um, and then of course rebalancing, right? So we're gonna put no rebalancing because basically if they're working with an advisor, or let's say they were paying attention to their allocations in quotes, right? Basically what that means is, let's say they had this stock and they had this bond. Well, the stocks, if they had the stocks about like, 50% and the bonds 50%. And then at the end of the year, the amount that the stocks grew was, up a little bit, and now it's at 60%, and the bonds are about 40% of the portfolio. They would rebalance that at the end of the year. Well, we're going to put no rebalancing because all we're really measuring here is going to be the stock market, right? And so that's going to be the stock market. Let me click on that. Um, Now, here's the thing. So no rebalancing. We're looking at the stock market. We're going to put 100%, right? Now we're going to analyze portfolios, right? Perfect. So from 1973 to, oh, I'm not sure why it says 1996, but let's go and take a look at the annual return. So they're taking about $50,000 a year, right? And so remember, I said sequence of returns risk a little bit earlier. Well, if they take, if they retire on bad years in the very beginning, well, look, 50,000, 50,000, great. They're retiring, they're living their life. And then, 20 years comes up. Well, they're starting to run out of money. And about 23 years later, they don't have any more. And so that presents a problem for anybody that's actually trying to retire in dignity because their last year they couldn't even take out the full 50,000. They had to take out 41,352. Now, again, this is the total stock market, right? If we look at large cap, which is basically your larger companies, right? Well, shoot, I mean, we're looking at you know, 19 years. Holy crap. 19 years, right? This is just large cap. Now, if we look at large cap value, maybe it'll last a little bit longer. Um, let's see, annual returns. Yeah, see large cap value. This is where I say that large cap value outperforms growth over time, right? So, um, perfect. Now, if we change it to large cap growth, let's see how large cap growth did, right? Well, shoot, large cap growth only lasted a whole decade and then they ran out of money. Jesus. Another thing here that a lot of advisors and just people in general forget to take into consideration is the tax considerations, right? So the different tax liabilities, right? So some of them, they might not even be, maybe you have your all your money in a pre-tax bucket, right? Well, if it's pre-tax, meaning it's tax deferred, the government hasn't got their taxes yet. Uncle Sam's like, hey, gimme, 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 right? And so at 72 and a half, about to be 73, right? That's your required minimum distribution age. And so there's going to be a lot of people who, they're used to not taking their money out because they want to save as much as they can. Maybe they're not ready to retire, but guess what? If it's in a tax deferred bucket, well, Uncle Sam hasn't gotten his money yet because you've been deferring the taxes till way later, right? So basically, that tax deferred bucket, Uncle Sam is requiring, he's like, I want my money and I need it now, right? He's not like a JG Wentworth commercial, but he's basically, I want my money and I need it now. So required minimum distributions. Well, that kind of ties into the whole tax liability thing, right? That I just talked about. So you deferred the taxes till later. Now you got to take into consideration how much you are forced to take out because of required minimum distributions. Notice the word required. So required minimum distributions, whatever that minimum is, you're required to take it out and you're required to pay tax on it because Uncle Sam wants his tax, right? And then, of course, take into consideration everything else. If it's the wrong time, meaning the market is down and you're required to take it out, well, that's horrible, right? Another way, if you combine all these, that's how you lose your wealth, right? Now, if it's tax free, like in a Roth IRA or something, then okay, you paid your taxes already. And of course, if it's taxable, well, shoot, you're paying taxes on it already, right? And so a lot of tax considerations are not even being taken into consideration. So now here's the thing, there's a lot of different financial planning software that's out there. Now, whether your advisor's using it or not, there's always flaws, in all of theirs, right? So what's really important is the fact that you're working with an advisor that has an investment philosophy, right? Something that's long term, something that's not timing the market, because it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market, right? Now, as you're accumulating your wealth, eventually you're going to start wanting to take your wealth out. So, kind of like going up a mountain, right? You go up Mount Everest, you get to the top, that's your retirement, and it's time for you to retire. So now you've gone up. That's more simple than trying to get down, because one wrong move going down, you can die. Well, same thing in retirement. One wrong move in retirement, your retirement can die. And so the reason I bring that up is because all these different financial planning models, all of these different, softwares that these financial planners and stuff use, there's still a flaw. And so it's always worth it to make sure that you understand, when you're working with an advisor, what is their investment philosophy? What is their financial planning philosophy, right? And if they're just, I'm only selling you one product or I'm selling you this other product. If they're very product specific and they're not strategy specific or philosophy specific, I think it's time for you to choose another advisor. You know, it's kind of like if you're a carpenter and you have one hammer, and what does a carpenter do? They're like, well, I got to measure things. What is it? One hammer, two hammer, three hammers? That's ridiculous, right? Yeah, I need to take this nail out. Well, no, I can just use the back of the hammer. Perfect. Right? I got to nail this nail in. Perfect. Well, I need a screwdriver. No, I can nail it in. Doesn't work. Right? So basically, you can't just be a one trick pony. You got to make sure that you're using everything. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is you definitely want to work with a fiduciary. That fiduciary is going to make sure that they have your best interest in mind. It's not about theirs, it's about yours. Right? There's a suitability standard and there's a fiduciary standard. And I always like to say, Candy is suitable for human consumption, but it's not always the best thing for you. So you always want to find a fiduciary because that is who has your best interest in mind. Now, the last thing here is I also understand that everyone's individual circumstances are very much unique to them. So you might talk to, Jack and Jill down the road, and you talk to Mary and Joe next door. They have very similar, conditions, maybe at the same retirement amount, the same house size, the same, earning potential when they were younger and now they're retiring. Well, little small differences here. Maybe, this household needs prescription medication that this household, based on their genes, doesn't. Right? Maybe this one has kids and grandkids and this one doesn't. Right? So there's definitely going to be different needs. Um, maybe they were gifted something over here. Now they invested it, but they invested in the taxable bucket. And this person, they just deferred the taxes out, but then now they even have some other money here that they got and it was tax free. Well, shoot, those are different tax liabilities, right? Now, if they invested in, similar things, not the same things, but similar things, they're going to have different results, right? And so people have different choices. They make different choices. They make different decisions, right? They they have different health. They are going to live differently. They're going to make different choices when it comes to, making the money last. Maybe one's older than the other, or maybe there's just a few year difference here, a few year difference there. There's always going to be a difference as far as their circumstance. So, thank you very much for, tuning in.